this session, it's the 6th DOF Events and Entertainment, hosted by Linares. And looks like we have all our panelists. So I will say goodbye and hand it over to Lisi, and I'll see you on the far side.
Bye, Trevor. Bye, Julie. Oh my goodness, I am so excited for this. This is where we talk about all the work that's being done, and it turns into a flower, and this is where it happens. This is where we get people excited and we spread the joy, so to speak. So we're going to do quick intros. We're going to talk about how events happen, how we make art, how we entertain. So Ivo, let's start with you, Hot Stuff. Tell me about what you do in this space.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're hearing me all right. And let me know if you're not, please. I'm Ivo Heyning. I'm the CEO at Playable Agency. I have been a producer and creator in AR, VR, XR now for going on 15 years. And my personal interest is in making sure that our future public commons of WebXR content is easy to find, accessible, available for all ages, and deeply interactive and collaborative.
I love it. Karam, you want to take it away?
Sure. My name's Karam, and I am the founder, executive director of the VRTO World Conference. It's a symposium on immersive arts and technologies since 2015, and also the 5 Hours Festival of International Virtual and Augmented Reality Stories, now going into its 8th year. And both of them in the last year became WebXR-based events, which will definitely stay, even if we ever go back to hybrid events, which I think is also important. And we worked with, we were one of the first Hubs Cloud clients, and continue to customize Hubs in interesting ways, which is one of the great things that Cloud gives us. And also we worked with our friend James Baikayanu, who is a wizard, long-standing wizard and mentor in the community, who keeps and maintains Janus Web for 5 Hours. So we were doing 4K stereoscopic streaming video real time in the browser in embodied environments. So I'm really excited to be here. I have mad respect for all of the people that are attending this conference and doing this work. Long way to go, long way we've come. So yeah, thank you.
It's funny because it's not, this is not being at the cutting edge. This is actually being cutting edge.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. Jono, take it away, Hot Stuff.
Hey everyone, my name is Jono. I'm a new media artist that's been working with WebXR since the WebVR API came out back in 2015 or so. I'm the former product lead of Within, a virtual reality like content website. And through Within, I also co-directed 2 music videos that are web-based and are VR-based, one for the Chemical Brothers and one for Matthew Deere. And super excited and honored to be part of this panel and this event. Excited to see the web push VR forward.
Amazing, thank you. And last and certainly not least, Mr. Brendan, tell me.
Howdy, I'm Brendan Bradley. I'm an actor and scrappy storyteller. I founded the Integrative Technology Lab at New York University. And in the middle of the quarantine, I basically pivoted to combine a decade of producing kind of avant-garde scrappy theater in basements and broom closets and 10 years of working on kind of digital immersive tech to try to just find accessibility to meet the moment. And that resulted in, what happened?
Okay, well, it was the voices of the ghosts of the machine.
The voice of God.
Yeah, the voice of someone, all right? So, okay, cool. So I would love for us to chit-chat about what entertainment means in this space. What entertainment, what does art, what does gathering people mean in this space? We're going to keep on going with what you're up to, Brendan, and talk about what performing in VR is and how there could be a crossover from current live actors that are kind of oblivious to what this new world can be and how we could share the stage, turn on 20th century players to a 21st century stage.
I think you put it rather concisely. I mean, I think really it does come down to that access. I think in some ways we're replaying, for me at least, a moment that happened over a decade ago when streaming media first became somewhat ubiquitous and the access of a DSLR camera. And that just opened up the ability for more people to create and get their story out. And I think that there's been obviously a lot of incredible work happening over the last 5+ years in the extended reality and virtual reality spaces. But I think that in some ways, COVID accelerated at least the interest and adoption for people to actually start integrating it into their workflow, because when everything became impossible and no one could hack the space problem because there were no physical venues, people were then willing to entertain some of these new frontiers, even if they were a little less than perfect. And so for me, at least, like I was sitting there kind of waving my arms going, if you're willing to do Zoom theater, there's some cool stuff over here that y'all should really be getting into. And so I think in some ways that is that kind of championing of like, it really is a moment for new voices to enter the space because the tools are the same for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, along those lines, for instance, Jono, I know that you too did some kind of transition where there was flat art and then you got turned on to what's going on digitally. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, my personal experience, I feel very fortunate. I studied graphic design and got into graphics programming, you know, on screens and in 2D, and was always kind of a little bit scared of 3D, 3 dimensions. And with kind of the interest of virtual reality and the WebVR and WebXR API, it's really kind of created a nice funnel for somebody like me to, you know, take skills as a web developer and enter this space, which, you know, normally would only be reserved for native, you know, developers and programmers. So I'm really, you know, excited to see more people make content and kind of drive the adoption rate and just like interoperability between different platforms together. You know, I think the web, different from any other kind of proprietary platform or OS, is great because it's the same code that runs on your phone, that runs on your computer, that can run in VR or on an augmented reality device. And so there's kind of this level playing field, as Brendan put it, you know, both for the creators, but also for the platform providers. And I think that's a super important space as an artist and a creative to inhabit.
You know, it's fascinating because we could literally begin to truly now more than ever see that transition into a new medium, a new space where people are translating a skill that they had or a talent that they have into this new world. And that leads me to you, Karen. You're at the forefront of seeing stories in being told in a way that have not been told before. And this is indicative of a new art form. You know, when film became film, there was a new language that came along with that and a new way of telling a story. Because you get so many projects firsthand, tell me about how you've seen the evolution of storytelling.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I did want to actually say to Brent and even Jono, like my friend's daughter, who's 9 years old, maybe 10 years old, just did a school pageant and it was all in Zoom. Most of the kids had never met before. They were doing prop handoffs frame to frame. They were doing like full green screen dance recitals together. It was like totally incredible. And it just underlines, first of all, the ingenuity of a small suburban school. But the fact that it's so important to make these tools available to everybody else, because they're going to teach us so much. And that's the number one concern I have, is always having the outside in view as well, to make sure that you're always looking at this from the perspective of an outsider who doesn't even know that they need to know. But once they do, they're going to really fly with this. As far as 5 Hours is concerned, it's called the Festival of International Virtual. All of those words are important. The international virtual and augmented reality stories, meaning that it's not a storytelling festival. We don't say once upon a time and then things happen and there's a plot point and a rising climax and a denouement and all that stuff. It means, how do you tell stories that are intrinsic and inherent inside of this method of telling a story? How do you infer things from like mise en place and a scene and break apart, decouple from time, and are able to use sort of spatial grammar to explore ideas of how to infer narrative from a context. So we always at Fivers are looking for things that are playing to the strengths or the possibilities of the medium. And yeah, like when we started in 2015, we didn't know what to charge for something like that. We were chasing after like weird YouTube videos and saying, can we put your thing in our festival? And now there's just an absolute abundance of incredible work. And there's even corners of this medium that people had sort of left for dead, which actually are extremely alive in all sorts of parts of this world that we live in. And you'd be amazed. I mean, we can't accept it all, how much interesting work is happening. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'm really interested in now is the kind of live performance stuff that the Under Presents was fostering. At VRTO next week, we have people like Ari Tar and Dasha Kitteridge, who are veterans of immersive performance space, and will soon be teaching a course at Tisch in immersive WebXR live performance. I mean, it's crazy to me. So they're going to be coming into our hubs world and getting our attendees to come up into the staging area and put on their own play by the end of the week, which is a way to force that discovery of like, how do you find props? How do you deal with concurrent users? How much can you scale it? How do you deal with like overflow? How do you record it? How do you translate it? What happens when something goes wrong? How do you do improv? And what I'm so excited about is like how many of these skill sets are just being developed as a whole new realm of possibility. And just to close on that, I was trying to explain to my friend yesterday what an NFT is and why she shouldn't be mad about it. And she was asking me all these things like, so does it mean this? And does it mean that? I said, nobody knows. We have like references from the past. We have things that are being put into position now, but I'm watching this like global crowdsourcing, just like in WebXR, of the structure, the framework, the rules, and you know, I stay in it because I want to make sure that the indies continue to kind of have the freedom to express themselves openly however they want in a decentralized manner. But it's amazing to think like these rules are just being written right now, and if not by us, then whom? And if not now, then when, right?
There you go. There you go. Ivo, you touch on something that is very interesting to me, and that is inclusivity. And I would like to hear from you, where have you seen the most growth that has made you more excited?
Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so obviously we've been creating in these open spaces for a number of years now, and previously in AR and VR, exploring that. Right now, I would say some of the things that are happening in hubs, absolutely, along with some of the branches off the hubs tree, like Immerse Space releasing their new chess space. I have personally been very interested in the other types of web experience zone offshoots. So Nowhere is a tool that I use sometimes for events. And again, this is it's a web-based platform for events, but it tends to bring people together from many different walks of life. So you're video enabled instead of avatar enabled, but you can have a very intimate conversation with people from all walks of life in a space that feels fully immersive, that feels like it's a gallery, or you're off in space in a beautiful whole other space. I love some of the web experiments that are happening right now. I've been playing with framevr.io just to create little galleries on the fly. We just did one for Pride. Figuring out how to create safe spaces that are more like niche communities. I think this is essential for people who aren't necessarily finding their people, whether that's, they've been going to Zoom school for a year, or they're just stuck in a rut. They've been locked down, and so they're looking for new communities. We see a lot of growth in the small, not just niche communities, but niche events that are tied to niche communities too.
Yes.
So I think you spoke to like DJ events, and this is happening across lots of platforms, playful, collaborative, figuring out how we're going to crowdsource for whether that's video production and machinima and making movies inside the metaverse, or music production. Some of the shows we did in Nowhere, we were sampling the audience, and then the DJs were mixing with them in real time. Cool. So you're taking these layers of improv that we might have been doing in performance art in a gallery or a theater, and you're bringing them into a web-based platform where things are a bit more plastic. You have different constraints, but you also have more opportunities to say, have a 12-year-old working with a 70-year-old. And that's not a barrier. That there's no necessarily like a wall between them. I spend a lot of time playing in some of these other platforms where you don't necessarily represent yourself as who you are. And again, bringing down barriers, leveling the playing field. It's no longer necessarily who you are as a physical being. It's who you create yourself to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The freedom involved is not only really exciting, but we get to really test our imagination. And so much growth happens when we tap our imagination. We forget on a daily that we have a wonderful brain that allows us to imagine all sorts of stuff. And that kind of magic is something that is crucial as we go through this life. So yes, it's a beautiful freedom that we find.
And you want to foster that kind of spontaneity between people too. That point of discovery when people really come together is really key. The level of engagement in a WebXR experience is incredible. I have spaces with a beautiful HDRI and someone's just sitting looking at the horizon, and they'll just linger for 20 minutes. They'll just hang out and just be there. And then conversation will sort of arise. It's not the same relationship as a 2D page where you're scrolling down and you're going through sales funnels and all that stuff. There's something about the sense of presence. I want to say, of course, none of this is super new. I mean, when we used to play World of Warcraft or EverQuest, of course, you could role play and you could gender swap. You could do anything you wanted. And that all is beautiful. And it's funny because sometimes when we're talking about WebXR, we're really just talking about 3D virtual space, and you may not even wear a VR headset. But the fact that you can is amazing. And when you finally, go in and look at it at scale, it's a completely other story that's happening. So there's two layers to it. There's the one of like the gamer, do you know what WASD means and how to get around and navigate? And you have to make sure you can teach that. We make sure that we have signs that don't use language to explain it. Like it's board game design stuff. Like, can you do this with symbols? What do these symbols mean in every country? Do they mean what you think they mean? And how quickly can you make that understandable to somebody who just manifested, have no idea where they are? They're scared, they're shivering, they're naked. And then how do they begin and not feel stupid? Because these people are intelligent, they're wonderful, they have lots to bring. But you have to think about, Will Wright, the creator of SimCity and, the creator of everything, really is amazing in his sort of talk about the 5 second, the 5 minute, and the 5 hour game cycle. If you don't get the 5 second game loop right, then the other ones don't matter. So you have to get that initial 5 second loop correct. People have to know how to navigate. It has to be intuitive. And a point to that is, all of these different worlds, all these different platforms really have to keep working towards that interoperability idea and communicating with each other to make sure like M means M and T means T and tab means tab. And, I remember last year we went into Janus Web from Hubs and they had done this beautiful world and it was like gorgeous, but all of a sudden all the controls were different and nobody knew how to do anything. And we were just paralyzed. And that was a moment where I recognized like how important that discussion is, that interoperability, the consistency of tools. If we're going to teach a grammar, then it better be a language. Like it has to have some kind of consistency at least.
There's some exciting work being done on this in the Open Metaverse initiative as well, the OMI group. If those of you are interested in exploring interoperability, but also portability of assets across worlds, figuring out how those portals between worlds are going to function and the language of that.
And how we destroy the language barrier, honestly. Because what's such a problem, you want to connect with people, and for whether you don't speak the language or whatever communication breakdown that is, if we have a symbolic language, we've just had a huge leap forward. Real quick, we're starting to run out of time. Jono, tell me what you're working on right now that you want to share that's going to give me goosebumps.
Yeah, I think kind of following up on Karam and Mivo's, points, I think the next steps in the WebXR kind of like world of experiences is about articulation in interactions. And I see so many demos that now have, hand articulation from the Quest 2 and ability to do all types of different gestures and stuff like out of the box now with 3JS and other libraries. And so I think this is a really interesting space to develop, what is that grammar, and to have it in an open space, a transparent space like the web is super important. Me personally, I actually have a grant with the Cooper Hewitt Design Museum, and I'm exploring kind of what is the museum experience in a digital format. So I don't have anything to show at the moment, but watch this space. I'm really excited about where I'm going and where all these technologies are kind of converging right now.
Amazing. Please, yes, let us know how we could spread the word, and just share as much as you can. So, Brandon, tell me what you're working on that could give me goosebumps.
I continue to onboard theater companies and theater artists into basically bringing live events and live worlds to their audience. We created the Onboard Festival, which basically we used live scene switching to let different groups build their own world and then move into their story. And we continue to expand on that. And I'm really excited right now about, we've been finding the distinctions between the participatory audiences and the passive audiences. There are these dual rituals that people want to be a part of. Some members want to really, really roll up their sleeves and kind of gamify everything, and others want to kind of sit in their seat in the dark and observe and just be like a part of the community. And so making space for both those audience modes and kind of welcoming them into the narrative venture in different ways is exciting to see where that goes.
Yes, I love it. We have some questions. We're going to get to that, but I am such a fan of bringing something live to the virtual world because it's something that just triggers our senses. All right. I have a question. Can you guys see the questions, or can it just be me?
Yep, I can see them.
All right, cool. Who wants to handle the first question? How do we provide opportunities for young learners to create stories with WebXR technology?
I'd love to jump in on that. That's an easy one. And we've been, and I know Brendan's been doing this too, advising universities and schools on how their theater programs can use places like Hubs, especially. Hubs is a great place to get started. I just went to Jackie Maury's college course, and she had all of her students make Hubs experiences. And it's very fun to kind of jump into places like Hub and Spoke and just kind of build your own. I'm also trying out a couple of the web-based solutions that other folks have mentioned earlier today, like Metaverse, that was presented earlier today. And I think if you hop onto these tools, FrameVR.io is another one, and just kind of create your own space. Even young people, teachers and students can do this, or you can do it, just have your students do it on your own. It's a lot of fun to also just do Metaverse tours and just take them through a couple of different spaces. And so that's something we're working on with some of our feature work.
Hubs actually has, if you do hubs.mozilla.com/spoke, Spoke is a really great tool that lets you build a 3D space. And so you have your Cartesian coordinates, you can drop in your 3D models and then publish it. And then it's live and it works. And it's such a great tool for getting a first sense of how 3D building worlds works.
And then you can put your multicast in, and that's your theater set.
And you're rocking and rolling totally. So this next question is obviously meat and potatoes. Is WebXR accessible enough with so many audiences not having access to VR or AR headsets yet? Who's going to take that away?
I can jump into this.
Yeah.
Oh, Brendan, go ahead.
No, go for it, John.
Okay. I was just going to say, you know, of all of the platforms that exist, the web is actually the best platform suited for creating an experience that is both in VR or AR and outside of that. And while I will say, you know, iOS and Safari have not adopted the WebXR API yet, there has been progress made over the last few months. And as a creator, it's exciting to see, you know, if you spend the time to really look at how this API works or use a library that has it implemented, it actually is like a cherry on top, you know, when you release it and then, you know, those flags are lifted or those other platforms like open up their gates, so to speak. So that's kind of like my thoughts on that.
Brandon,
I'll just dovetail on that. That like I think for me the biggest value proposition for all developers and all hardware and software side is that I'm a theater actor. So like me buying a couple $100 device, you're going to have to convince me why. And so I think in some ways a lot of what's being done with WebXR, I can type in a URL and I can check it out and I can see kind of the balcony experience of what it's like to be in these spaces. And that to me is the selling proposition for like, oh, this would be so much cooler if I could use my hands. This would be so amazing if I was fully immersed. And so that is the scaffolding that I think we all need if we want that mass adoption that's going to scale all the stuff that we're working on.
Yeah, WebXR is definitely the gateway drug.
Just one more thing to add to that. Accessibility is a way bigger subject, actually, and it means a lot of different things, It should be designed with a community that has accessibility at the forefront and also has to actually use these tools depending on any sort of disability that they might be dealing with or any other sort of obstacle. My call to action is that I'd love to see the community start to contribute towards building like SDKs that can be put into place that can handle sort of the most preliminary problems, at least for onboarding. And then we can like build from there. But I think to ask an independent developer, you should have accessibility features from the outset is a big ask. It's an enormous amount of research. It requires funding. It's a very nuanced, complex subject. But if we start to build a general package that could start to help people to put those tools into place for all the different platforms, that would be a really important big step.
Absolutely. And beyond like the W3C and the Open Metaverse group I mentioned earlier, going to hackathons like the Creating Realities Hackathon is a great place to find the other developers who have pieces of that SDK or may have adapted something for a specific accessibility need.
I love it. All right, we have 3 minutes. Brennan, what you put up there? Do you want to share that with us, please?
Oh, I was just based off of what everyone was talking about. To me, it's the trifecta of any virtual experience is the live element that I think is that kind of telepresence or synchronicity, immersive technology, whatever that could mean in given the particular experience. And then for me, it's all about accessibility. I wouldn't be here today if there wasn't a community theater an hour from my house and some really nice adult was willing to drive me. So the idea that we can make all of this more accessible, we can make just the tools to create more accessible. That's the number one priority to me.
That's really why we're here. We don't work in a vacuum, though we might make our work in one room. But the idea is to bring people together. The idea is to have an audience. And that connection is key. So I would love to give a very quick shout out, by the way, and thank you so much for hosting us in such a beautiful way. I think it's often seen that the entertainment and the events in this space are sometimes ghettoized or hard to find, but there's an amazing wealth of award-winning content out there across these different networks. And I want to encourage you to go out there and share the content that you're finding. A shout out to Kevin Coons, one of the directors I worked with today, just won a Telly Award for Silence in Paradise, a project I got to work on a few years ago. There are some interesting things happening in the publishing and distribution of WebXR content. And I would encourage you to keep sharing those links in the chat because I know a few of you have XR guides out there so that we can find the better content. Thank you, Evo. Yes. Anybody else want to chime in? We've got like 60 seconds, kids.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to jump in and say I'm so glad you guys went first. And to echo what Eva was saying, you know, like entertainment is sometimes just shoveled down to the end because it's part of the after party or whatever. But it's, you guys just set me up for my panel that's coming up next about education. And you touched on so many different things about allowing students to be creative. You know, you talk about these schools who all of a sudden have to use resources to put a class together or a show together through Zoom. And, you know, a year and a half ago, nobody would have ever even conceived those ideas. But as I take my panel into the education side of things, we want to talk a little bit more about what you guys have talked about. So you've kind of set the stage for education. And maybe this is a lesson that we start to share with everybody, is that, you know, we start to drive into the creativity, because that's the most important thing now, as we start to build all these new worlds and opening up those doors to creative tools that can be used for the people that don't code, for, you know, all age groups, you know, from young to old to developers. I think the conversation that you guys had was great today. So maybe before we switch over to my panel, is there one quick thing that each of you want to share really quickly? You know, word of advice to all those that are listening. Go.
Don't be afraid to code. Code is accessible. You just have to like chip away at it. Just do, you know, have a specific goal in mind, get that thing done, and eventually you'll string all those little projects together into a larger language. So don't forget to code and get your hands dirty as well. And then the second thing is VRTO is happening on June 2nd, conference.virtualreality.to.
Love that. The future is going to be crowdsourced. This is massively multiplayer media, and we're working on a new meta movie. So look for a invitation to submit your own virtual beings and metaverse stories coming up soon.
I love it. You guys, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing 30 minutes with me and with everyone else out there. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much for being with us today. Great. And now I think, and thanks, Lisi, for moderating. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.